Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is and always will be George.
My name is Tom.
And my name, but might not be in the future, is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com.
I don't know why we're thinking of changing our names or why that suggestion's been made, but...
I don't think you're listening, Adam. I am deliberately not thinking of changing my name, so...
Right, okay. But why would that be any different from normal?
It is George, and it always will be George. It's just a statement of fact. And you need to fucking focus up, buddy. Get it together.
Fair enough. Unless, of course, you want to run for state politics, in which case you'll probably need to change your name to distance yourself from this podcast.
I'll be John Whiteman.
Well, yeah, you'll have to change, your name, your face, like anything identifiable, because otherwise people will be able to figure it out. You might have to get the surgeon from Face Off involved, because, I mean, that technology was even able to change, like, build and weight and, like, stuff. Yeah. It's crazy. You can be a completely new person.
Body, penis size, birthmarks. It's amazing that neither of their wives picked up on that. I was going to say I have to change my face like that movie Freaky Friday.
Yeah. But didn't change the blood type. That's how he proved it to his wife, if I remember the movie correctly. That movie is brilliant, and I will not hear a bad word about it.
No, but Face Off is, I mean, it is...
It's amazing.
It's perfect at being exactly what it is, which is a terrible movie.
And it would be an hour shorter if John Woo didn't just love slow-mo so much. Like, everything had, like, a slow-mo moment in it. And it's like, this movie would be so much faster. It's like the Snyder Cut. The Snyder Cut would be so much shorter if Zack Snyder didn't just love slow-mo in that movie so much. It might be 3 hours instead of 4.
You could cut a tight 45 out of it, I reckon.
Yeah, but you could probably cut a tight 45 out of it well, unlike them cutting the tight 2 hours out of it to make the other one that we saw, which was a dumpster fire.
I mean, I haven't seen either of them. I'm just basing it based on what I've heard on the internet.
You're not missing much, for either of them.
How good is the color grading? How good is it?
I mean, from a visual effects perspective, what I saw of the Snyder Cut, because I was like, all right, I've given you 90 minutes of my time, the length of a regular film, and I'm not that keen to keep going, especially not for another 2.5 hours. So I'm out. Like, you're not so many leagues better than the original Trash Fire that I'm willing to put more time into.
3, the extended edition. It's not that. It's not on that tier.
Yeah, if after 90 minutes I'm happy to turn it off and not come back to it, you haven't sold me.
Look to my coming on the dawn of the 5th hour. Look to the east.
Like my girlfriend, God bless her soul, she cannot watch a movie that's longer than 2 hours, or she will be asleep.
I know.
Oh God, Alice is like that. If it's longer than 90 minutes or 2 hours pushing it, but if she hears that it's longer than 2 hours, she's like, oh nah, like. You got to be fucking good to be worth that long, and I don't think anything is in her eyes.
I think it's so funny you guys say this. Gracie has a similar reaction where if she sees a film is over 2 hours, she'll look down, look up at me and go, are you happy to stop it halfway through? And I'll be like, no. And she'll be like, well, then we have to watch something else. That's the only way I'm watching a movie that's over 2 hours is by doing it in 2 parts. Like it's, early days of cinema and there's an intermission.
Yeah. Drives a hard bargain.
Speaking of riveting viewing, we are a news and comedy podcast about newsy type stuff and things. And riveting viewing, the Tasmanian election was on last night. The Tasmanian state election. Tasmania is a state of Australia for those people who.
It's an island off the coast of the island that is Australia.
Yeah, an island within an island.
Hands up who knew it was happening before the ABC posted Anthony Green calling it.
I definitely heard about it this week.
It was just on Twitter and it was like, Tasmanian election, looks to be like a win for the libs. And I was like, Tassie was having an election this weekend. No idea.
It's pretty much like that. It's
good for them.
Okay. It was a snap election, so it was called sort of unexpectedly very early in the process, apparently due to... Well, I think the Premier really just wanted to capitalise on the success of the coronavirus defense, if you will, of the state and keeping it sort of relatively COVID-free. They had a bit of an outbreak in Burnie, but not like we've seen in the rest of the country. So that seems to have affected his outcomes. He obviously looked at Mark McGowan in WA and went, "Oh, what an
wow." His opponent conceded weeks before the count.
Not quite the same thing. So it basically is the same results almost from the last election. They'll probably slip through with like a 1-seat majority or something. It's very confusing because Tasmania uses this thing called the Hare-Clark system, which basically doesn't make any sense. There's like 5 electorates with 5 seats in each electorate, and the results are sort of proportionate, and there's always weird things happening with preferences. So who really knows what's going to happen?
And we do a scissors, paper, rock, and after that we do a hopscotch, but you can only use your left leg. You need to have your right hand.
And if you use your right leg, then it goes to an illegal game of 2-up, unless the election happens to fall on Anzac Day, in which case it incumbent wins once it gets to that level of specificity.
And only the candidate on, if it's held on Anzac Day, then the candidate who's imbibed the most alcohol without throwing up becomes king of the universe.
King of the universe. It's a role that's not held up very often, but it is literally written in the legislature.
I'm not going to lie, it's a long shot. It is a gamble, but you know.
Yeah, whomever can drink the most and then play the entirety of the last post through a bugle without just thundering through it.
All of these ideas, by the way, great. We should definitely put these into practice.
Less ridiculous than what's actually the case, by the sounds of it.
How with the US election, they were talking about what are Donald Trump's paths to win? What are his paths to victory here?
While we were waiting for those 3 states to confirm their count, yeah.
Yeah, they basically called the Tasmanian election in 3 hours. So, it's a bit different, obviously.
Anthony Green's the man.
Just Anthony Green, the election correspondent, senior election analyst on ABC, just screaming, oh, my men are dead. Non-partisan, obviously. Non-partisan.
It's also funny as well because, there is every election, there are drinking games online you can find to the ABC election coverage. And even Anthony referenced it at one point. He's like, so one of the drinking game items this year is if I say Denison, because the electorate name has changed to Clark. So if I say Denison, then you have to, and then I was like, you're referencing your own mythology here. Does
that make the game not cool anymore?
I don't know.
As soon as Dan Andrews got involved on the get on the beers thing, we're like, all right, it's over. Nah, all right, we can't do that anymore. That means dead. It's not fun. Or when Scott Morrison referenced Engadine Maccas, we're all like, well, fuck.
Yeah, so
it's fun if we're having fun, if we're making fun of you. If
it has to be at their expense. Yeah, if Scott Morrison also makes fun of the time that he definitely did shit his pants at Engadine Maccas, then it takes all the joy out of it. You want it to hurt. No, Anthony Green, I think if you are one of those people who engages in drinking games based on the outcomes of political situations, hearing Anthony Green name check your fucking deviancy and alcoholism on the show would be very exciting because you're one of those people. Obviously, it's for you. So
he said the thing.
Yeah, they said the name of the thing and the thing.
But yeah, it looks like the Liberal government under Premier Gutwein will retain power. First time that the Tasmanian Liberals have had 3 terms in government consecutively.
Great.
I saw the swing was pretty interesting from my very layman's understanding of just the swings. But Liberal had a negative swing against it by a couple of percent, Labor by 5% against them, but the Greens had 2% up.
Yeah.
So while it was still Liberal government returns, those results are kind of interesting.
Yeah, the independents and Greens did very well.
I do find it so interesting where it's Labor wasn't in power and yet somehow managed to get whatever it was, 4.5% less of the vote than last time around. It's what do we have to do?
Don't like you.
Yeah, it's the other guys are in power, but we fucking hate you guys even more than we did previously. I was just sitting here, man.
It's funny because Tasmania is Sorry, I keep cutting you guys off. My apologies.
No, that's all right. No, as the resident Tasmanian on the podcast, you're probably better to understand like these areas than we are.
We go to our senior inbred expert, Adam. Adam, you've got the cutting edge of Tasmanian knowledge. Tell us your thoughts.
Cutting edge because I had my second head cut off at birth.
The brain, two brains working there.
So perhaps one of the reasons why I think the Greens have done quite well this election is that. So, 2 weeks ago, Richard Flanagan's book came out about the salmon farming industry in Tasmania. And turns out it's not very good. It's basically unregulated and it's literally killing coastal waterway and environments. So there's been a bit of blowback on that because the governments over the last 10 years haven't done there's not really any enforcement. There's no regulation to it. The EPA is kind of toothless to it. So, they think that potentially has swung votes away from the major parties because they're not.
That'd be a good argument.
To be in cahoots with.
That'd be a good argument if Tasmanians could read, Adam, which we all know they don't.
That's true.
So,
they have to have Google Translate, George.
Richard Flanagan, whose book I read called The Living Sea of Waking Dreams, which was a fiction book, obviously. Obviously he definitely is very famous Tasmanian writer, is definitely clearly very interested in the environment and, sort of weaves that into his work quite a bit. It is interesting that I was kind of joking before that, Tasmanians are illiterate, but surely a book being released, it's an undertaking to read a book, and his books are really brilliantly written, but I very much doubt that a vast majority of the Tasmanian populace sat down with his copy of Toxic and read through it all and understood it deeply and said, I think this is going to change how. Maybe they saw the coverage of the book and
the coverage has been what's swung it. That's how I found out about it. The ABC and the Monthly as well, which is an online news website. They've been publishing stuff. There's a 20-minute video the Monthly's got out, which is basically a summary of it. It's kind of like a little 7:30 investigative report that sort of summarizes everything that's in the book. But the coverage of it has been what's affected it. I don't know whether his book sales are going through. Actually, no, that's a lie. Nick McKim did say he's on to his third reprint already or something. They've sold out and they keep reprinting it. So in 2 weeks. But anyway. So that could potentially have changed some results, but the actual makeup of seats is relatively similar to the last election.
Speaking of salmon and industry and overfishing and corruption and stuff, did either of you guys see what I'm just going to call the vegan documentary, Seaspiracy? No.
No, I've seen it come up in my feed and stuff like that. The most common thing I see referencing Seaspiracy is people being frustrated that conspiracy wasn't the title.
Yes.
That
seems like
the pun was right there. Yeah.
So they're not angry over the content; they're angry over the fact the marketing guys.
You may as well call it Conspirafish or something. It makes just as much sense as Seaspiracy.
Yeah.
Anyway, but the point of that is the whole sort of industrial salmon, salmon farming is kind of cooked as an industry, and even wild salmon and overfishing is obviously a massive problem in its own right, and sort of talking about the global, fishing system and how broken it is. But it just seems like every sort of vegan documentary that I watch where they're look at these fucking disgusting images of animals being disgusting. Look at the conditions that you're a fucking piece of shit for eating meat. You shouldn't eat any fucking meat at all, you fucking piece of shit. And then it's 10 minutes at the end about how being vegan is the best. And it's yes, I agree with you. You're probably all conceptually correct. In 100 years when someone finds this footage, I'm going to be judged for being a terrible, shitty person who still eats meat. However, I do still eat meat. So it just seems like one of a piece with every vegan document. They're all the same thing. It's did you know eating an egg is the same as smoking cigarettes? And I'm probably not. Probably not though.
So that's a Rocky.
Yeah, it's I feel like all those vegan docos are of a piece. But I like Richard Flanagan. I think he writes really well. I'd be curious to read this Toxic book and see to see what the story is there.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the environment, there was an interesting article that came out this week from the ABC, which was, I think, talking about a study published from the Australia Institute, which was talking about fossil fuel subsidies over the last, what was it? I can't remember the actual timeline.
It was talking in the last couple of financial years. So based on like I think it was the 18-19 financial year.
Financial year, yep.
That the Australian people subsidise the fossil fuel industries to the tune of like $10 billion.
$10.3 billion.
The 0.3 is important. When you're talking in billions, the point is definitely a really big part of that, because that 0.3 is more money than I'll ever make in my entire life.
0.3 of a billion's a lot.
Is that 3 million? 0.3?
10.3 billion. So it'd be 300 million.
Yeah, Adam. Think bigger, buddy. A billion's a lot.
Billion's a lot of money, buddy.
You know the thing that the funny calculation I did the other day? You know the time analogy of like comparing a million to a billion if you measured it in seconds or whatever? A million seconds is something like 12 days, I think. Right. But a billion seconds is 31.79 years.
Yeah. So if you're a millionaire...
Before my birthday this year, a billion seconds will have passed in my lifetime. It's taken my entire life for a billion seconds to happen.
So, put it this way. You, as a person, are closer to a millionaire than a millionaire is close to a billionaire.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is 10 billion, B with a B. Billion with a B with a B, billion with a B.
Billion with a B.
So if you were to get that 0.3 equals 300 millionaires, put it that way.
Interesting stat. That's $19,686 a minute if you're talking about the financial year. And so it's not just the federal government, it's state governments as well. But basically there's a few different ways that the government, plural, effectively subsidise the fossil fuel industry.
So since the time that we started live streaming, the government has supplied $354,348 to the fossil fuel industry, via subsidies. Since this time that we started recording. Oh, it's gone up.
You're looking at. Oh, there we go. Oh, there's another one. Oh, there's another one.
It's gone up.
There it goes. Have it like a Twitch feed whenever there's a donation, a thing like just appears on the screen.
Ding, ding, ding.
So
now I have to show my arsehole, right? That's how it works. Ding, 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 ding.
Implied arsehole. You can't. There's nudity guidelines, George.
Implied arsehole is also the name of my sex tape.
Yeah, I was going to say that should be autobiography.
It's artistic and suggestive.
George Sipos, implied arsehole.
Implied arsehole, the George Sipos story. And then it's like me
it's layered,
pointing
at
my butt.
It's a layered name.
Kind of like turning around, kind of like pointing at my butt and winking, just like...
Yeah, layered title, because it could mean quite literally, or it could mean like, as a person. It's like, it was always implied I was an arsehole, but did I ever really do anyone wrong? The George Sipos story.
Frank Sinatra's My Way, George Sipos, Implied Arsehole, the movie.
I think you should get a picture of like two nice grass-covered hills that just come down and meet sort of in the middle, into a nice crevice to put perhaps
an implied arsehole.
Part of an implied arsehole.
Or you could show that like you've, I don't know, like just a close-up shot of like, your butt in jeans and you've just recently sat down on like a chocolate starfish.
There you go.
And be like, implied arsehole.
Guys, I think, look, we've done our marketing analysis for this production meeting. That's it. That's lunch. Let's go.
All right, it's 10:30, Adam.
It is. It's actually 4:35. And
oh, my God.
We've worked so much overtime.
We forgot to eat. But yeah, we're subsidising the fossil fuel industry quite a lot, which kind of sucks given, all these warnings we've been getting of how many years we have to actually fix shit, or else we're all going to die in a hellfire. And it certainly doesn't keep me up at night. No, sirree. Who said it did?
A large part of the 10.3 billion is 7.84 $4 billion, which is allocated to the fuel tax credit scheme in the federal government. And that also, by the way, exceeds the $7.82 billion spent on army capabilities and the $7.55 billion on Air Force capabilities, to put that into perspective.
We could have a whole nother military-industrial complex for what it's costing us to subsidise these fossil fuel industries.
Bargain!
Mate, we could have a whole nother set of useless fucking fighter jets and submarines.
We could have our own Space Force.
There's a further $1.2 billion to coal, oil and gas companies from state governments, which goes towards things like helping reduce the cost of exploration, improving ports, railways and power stations, while also funding research aimed at reducing emissions caused by burning fossil fuels. And in terms of states, Northern Territory is the biggest backer of the gas industry over the longer term, with almost $4 billion committed to an offshore gas project and $1 billion for pipelines. Queensland is up there, with Western Australia and New South Wales coming in the middle. And then the ACT and Tasmania don't really have any clear sort of assistance because they've got their own clean green thing going on. Interesting, though. I mean, yes. Is this figure too much? Yes, in my opinion. But if you were to take this...
Too much compared to what, Adam? Compared to a cherry ripe? Certainly it's too much. For the fossil fuel industry, it's not nearly enough, some might argue. I have been, full disclosure, I am on the board at multiple fossil fuel emitting companies, but it doesn't change my opinion whatsoever. Just because I work for the Saudis doesn't mean that it would change my opinion. I just genuinely think it's a gas-fired recovery. Okay?
Yeah.
That's nothing to do with...
You know what the BP stands for in BP, right? George Stipos.
Mm-hmm.
That's you.
Yep.
Yeah.
If they took, for instance, the fuel tax credit scheme away,
so
you would wonder, though,
just to explain what that... Yeah, so explain what that is. So when...
Well, I don't really know what it is.
So what happens is the government charges a tax on fuel. So there's an excise, a fuel excise.
Yep.
Where anytime someone uses fuel, a certain percentage of that money is taken as tax and given to the government, right? So what businesses are allowed to do is, for specific circumstances, they're allowed to write those costs off and get that money back. So, and this is like the cause of some consternation recently in these articles where it's talking about like, well, what technically qualifies as a subsidy? It's like, well, like allowing certain industries to not pay tax that others have to pay and lowering the cost of the inputs of their industry so they can sell their product for cheaper is a subsidy. And that's what they're doing by funding these things, by funding research, the CSIRO for fuel industry and all this sort of stuff, by, giving out grants for, feasibility projects to create new coal mines and power stations and all this sort of stuff. By spending all this money and by reducing the amount that they need to pay in tax, you are essentially giving them a leg up, which is what a subsidy is.
But if you took that away, what would be the net effect to energy and fuel prices, basically?
Probably costs would go up a little bit, or their profits would be lower.
But do you think it's... I wonder, because we're not particularly energy self-sufficient here in Australia, I think it would probably cause... I don't think pulling it away entirely is as simple as what we'd like it to be.
It won't happen. Like it's one thing to say it's a good thing that we should do. We should get rid of these subsidies because they don't serve any purpose and actually serve to. The problem with fossil fuels is it doesn't price in. This is what the IMF's report did. The International Monetary Fund is they put together a report that said Australia was spending what equated to $37.4 billion in subsidies because they costed in things like the tax revenue that's lost. That's the 10 billion number that we're coming at, that we mentioned before. But as well as like the social price of pollution and the effect on the environment and the the broader economy in terms of gas emissions and what that's going to affect. And so this has always been the problem with fossil fuels is that they're underpriced because they don't factor in the damage that they do to the economy and other stuff globally. That's why a carbon tax is a good idea, is because it takes those real costs that are diffused amongst the society at large and builds it into the price of the product. So the real price of carbon of these fossil fuels is higher, and therefore, by artificially inflating that price, of fossil fuels, it makes the renewables that don't have such negative societal effects, makes them more competitive. And so people will then naturally choose the more competitive energy sources. So those costs to society are normally externalized. Other people pay those. But by having a carbon tax or something like that, or reducing, at the very least, reducing subsidies, it sort of gives you a more real cost of what actually using fossil fuels does to the world, if that makes sense.
Not according to Matt Canavan, George.
Old coal humper Matt Canavan. He denied that the subsidies even exist. Now, these subsidies is just like, no, I don't agree with the BBC. But like, I mean, he would say that because it's his job to hump coal. So, I mean, they call it in the ABC article, they're like, noted coal fanatic and, like sneaky looking fuckwit of the year, Matt Canavan, has been vocal in his support of the fossil fuel industry. It's like,
former resources minister and outspoken Queensland.
Twat, Matt Canavan. Like it goes without saying.
Those are not direct quotes from the ABC. I feel that need to be prefaced.
It feels like direct quotes to me.
Well, you know what ABC stands for, right? George Sipos.
I don't know.
That's you.
I don't know where this gag has come from, and I don't like it.
I was trying to bring that gag back to see if a second time it would land.
What was the name of his book again? Inconvenient Asshole or something? Or
Implied Asshole.
Implied Asshole. The actual Matt Canavan story. So he's, it's bad. It's just real bad to be such.
It's a lot of money. It's a fuckload of money.
It's so much money, and it's like, this is the argument that I was having. Remember, I told you I was arguing with not arguing, disagreeing, in a polite way with one of the guys from work over this. So it's like, it doesn't need to be a massive thing where it's like, oh, your tax dollars are going to go up because, we need to subsidize, clean energy up front in order to get good results. It's like, we could just redirect the subsidies and all this infrastructure that we're putting into fossil fuels, just not give that to them anymore and just redirect those same resources into clean energy. It wouldn't cost the taxpayer any additional dollars, but it would make a lot of difference for the advance. Like if green energy got like a $10 billion infusion year on year, every year for 100 years, it'd be pretty competitive with fossil fuels, I reckon. It already is. Like,
but what about my Hyundai? How am I going to put fuel in it, George?
I get it. I do. We just, like, it needs to be done. And it's going to happen over a series of, 10 years or 15 years or however long it's going to take. But we're going to have to make some hybrids. And we're going to have to make some electric cars. And the government's going to have to help with that. It's like the cars.
Hydrogen, George.
Hydrogen's not a real thing. Forget about the hydrogen. So it has
hydrogen does exist.
No,
we're not denying the existence of hydrogen.
First of all,
no one
can tell me that coronavirus is real. And second of all, hydrogen is in your imagination. I don't care how base of an element it is. Okay. So show me a proton, right? Get fucked. So it just like, it seems like that would be a pretty easy zero cost way of really encouraging renewables, is taking the money that were already, and I know we subsidize other businesses in the same way. They get tax credits and tax loopholes and all this sort of stuff. And that's the point that Matt Canavan is making, insofar as he has a point with his stupid face, where he's saying like, well, we subsidize a bunch of industries like this. And it's like, that's also bad. Like the fact that we have a bunch of like, tax loopholes that you could drive a truck through that also apply to other industries is also bad. Like all of these things are bad.
George, but it's really important that we just let the market decide, right? We just let the market decide.
We let the market decide by distorting the market with subsidies. That's a really great way of letting the free market flourish freely.
Yeah. The market can decide. We just won't listen.
Sidebar this week, speaking of economic policy, which we're sort of branching into. I just wanted to touch on this quickly because I didn't really prep it before the show.
Would you say you're going to lay hands on it? Like so many Scott Morrisons.
Lay hands, God spoke to me, something. I just felt like I had to bring it up. So what we're referencing there, by the way, is the fact that every year Scott Morrison goes to one of the Pentecostalist like super gatherings, and the media just has a field day. It's just like Cool. And like they invite them in and they get them to film it because actually for the church, it's actually a pretty good.
It's good publicity.
Campaign.
Good publicity, right?
Yeah, it's funny how they're just like, hey, we all just remember for 24 hours that our prime minister is a religious zealot, and then we just, I don't know, we just forget about it and we just move on to the next thing.
It's because he just gives such juicy quotes.
Because he's asked to speak. It'd be different if he was going there just participating and sort of having a pray and whatever else. But he goes there and actually does like a keynote speech.
Yeah.
Which is like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so yeah, we'll all forget about that tomorrow. I mean, it's not. He didn't say anything like, ban the gays or anything like that. It was just he basically said that social media is the work of the evil one. And we need to be nicer to each other was kind of what he was saying, which is not wrong.
I mean, if it's the usage of the evil one, then why haven't we banned Peter Dutton? Oh, shit!
Girl!
Oh, shit!
I was going to say, it's, that's weird. I didn't know Anthony Albanese invented social media. That's so weird.
But sidebar. So in terms of economic policy this week, Josh Frydenberg basically, I don't know, I thought I had a stroke or something when I listened to this. In the news. So he had they're warming up to the budget, right? So the budget's coming and they just do a little
Tuesday?
Yeah, I think so. It's
Tuesday.
It's usually the first Tuesday in May, is it? Or the second Tuesday?
Firing up the budget cannon.
Anyway.
Firing up the budget cannon. And they're just putting teasers out there. They're doing like little 30-second trailers. Here's $1.7 billion to childcare. Yeah, you get excited about that. Here's a speech to give you sort of an idea or a warm-up as to what's going to happen. And effectively, Frydenberg basically, in this speech the other day, basically said that the budget will not take any sharp pivots towards austerity, which is pretty strong language from a guy who was in the same government, I'm pretty sure, as one Tony Abbott.
Mm-hmm.
What did Chairman Fryden have to say about that? About face?
I don't know if he actually. I haven't got the quote in front of me in terms of if he was asked a question directly towards that, but basically,
are you sure Comrade Frydenberg wasn't? It was really him? It could have been a body double, perhaps, or.
Maybe. They're talking about getting jobs, the unemployment rate down, George. So effectively, I think at the moment they've realised the Reserve Bank can't do anything and they're fucking useless. So the concept is that the government actually has to do work to do stuff.
I was hoping just to hang around to the next election cycle and do some upskirt photos. I didn't realise we'd actually have to do stuff between now and then.
We'll come back to that. So they want to get the unemployment rate with a 4 in front of it. Allegedly, because that will drive jobs growth and jobs wage growth will go up.
I guess if there's fewer unemployed people, it implies that those people are employed. I guess
it would.
You gotta get there though.
It would imply that, Tom, but it doesn't necessarily follow because of increased casualisation in the workworkforce. That unemployment number is much less relevant now than it used to be in the past, right? So if you've got a bunch of people driving Uber. Do they technically count as employed, quote unquote, or are they just now this new permanent underclass of people in society that we're just conveniently not counting and then just giving look at us, top marks, we've got an unemployment rate of 4-point-something%. And it's like, okay, but that's great, but what about all of these people over here who are unemployed? And they're like, no, we don't count them. The underemployed people or the people that are working casual gigs or a bunch of other people. It's like there are all these new categories now that we could just shove into this basket of like, don't think about. Okay, well, you guys all don't think about. So if you could all just step forward, please. And, so an unemployment rate of 4.
I'll hold my breath, George, until I get my pay rise. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I wouldn't hold my breath.
Keep holding your breath. You may turn blue. Yeah. Like all the companies around are just going to go, oh, this is fantastic. Do you guys want some more money? Yeah, have some more money, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the same work? Yeah, no, for the exact same work. I'm just a really nice company and I would like to give you more money because...
And that's assuming they don't go, well, we could give people more money to do the job here or we could just offshore it all to the Philippines.
Creating jobs, just not in Australia. Creating jobs in the Philippines.
Yeah. No takes backsies.
Tom, you referenced before, or someone referenced one of you two. Something about texting and taking upskirt photos.
George.
George, the subject of whom, of course, is Andrew Laming, still somehow in Parliament. I don't understand how this works, but anyway.
Is he still on leave for empathy training? Or
he's still on medical leave.
Yep. All right. Still on this magic, amazing leave that only alleged sex pests in the government are allowed to take.
Yeah, it's a So you got personal leave, carers leave, you've got mental health leave, and you've got sex pest leave. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. So how much is the sex pest leave per annum? It's actually as long as you fucking want, because you're the one you're in power. So it really doesn't matter. You can just
yeah.
So is this like a trick, like unlimited annual leave, or are there any limitations? Do I have to sexually assault? Are you incentivizing me to sexually assault someone in order to potentially get this leave, or how does it work exactly?
Well, just the one limit that I can think of is it depends how close to losing a majority we are.
Okay.
And that kind of dictates how many weeks or months per year you can take sex pest leave.
Got it. So if we've got 10 seats in Parliament, then what's the story?
Yeah.
A 10-seat majority.
Up by 10, if we've got a 10-seat majority and you're the first person to apply for sex pest leave, we fire you on the spot.
Right,
because the optics are better that we just get you out of there. And, maybe by the time we're around, if it's just individual sex pest cases, spread out over our term, you're on your ass.
So you're saying it really can only be used in a situation of high-density sex pest situations with a slim majority.
Yeah, essentially. And
Perfect.
The first guy to apply for it, you're fired. The 9th guy, in for leave. The ultimate Centrelink package of just your $200,000 a year salary to just still be a seat.
Cool. So what is it? It's May 2nd? Cool. So I'll see you guys in Feb, I guess. I'll just see you at the next election. Just make sure you send my paychecks. Cheers.
Oh, yeah, of course. You're still giving us supply, right?
Yeah, whatever you want. Whatever you say, dickhead.
Text him. Text the vote.
Yeah, text it to me. Go fuck yourself. All right, see ya.
Perfect.
See ya, cunt.
Wonderful.
Obviously, with paid sex pest leave, Andrew Laming's still able to use social media because on Wednesday, shock announcement, he revealed that he'd actually been diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD for short. And suggested through this post that was an explanation for some of his online harassment and other, cases of inappropriate behavior.
Okay. Hello, portion of the population that have also been diagnosed with ADHD. Have you met the underside of this very large bus?
Yes, exactly right.
Wow. It's so galling.
I love the idea. So one of the things that he's been accused of, obviously, is obviously harassing a number of women and creating, I think it was something like 30 sock puppet Facebook page accounts, totaling something like 50,000 posts that he's posted without disclosing that he's the one who's actually making these posts, disguising them as news and community pages, but he's the grand wizard pulling the strings. And it's if only he showed this much care, effort, and dedication to his work, being paid by the Australian people to make legislation. It's when does he find time?
How does he have the time to do this?
I'm doing 2 tweets a week out of obligation, being I've got to plug the podcast or whatever, #Ozpol, get on it. And meanwhile, Andrew Laming somehow holding down a full-time job and, tweeting it's the fucking apocalypse coming.
This is the guy we discovered spent an entire Saturday fighting people in the comments of a Simpsons meme page. Epic dedication to the thing. But it's just so disgustingly offensive for him to say, whether or not, as to the legitimacy of his diagnosis or if he's just pulling this out of his ass, I can't speak to like all that sort of stuff. So he may have just recently gotten a diagnosis of ADHD. But then use that to imply that is why he has had really poor behavior. It's just unbelievably awful.
So, Tom, you're the doctor. Giving me the information that I have ADHD.
Well, you see, Mr. Sipos, we've come back with the results from the various tests that we've conducted here, and we think we can explain a little bit of what's going on to you. You have something that is commonly referred to as ADHD.
Okay. So is that why I'm a cunt to everyone?
I wouldn't put it like that.
No, is that why I'm a dickhead? Why I'm a piece of shit? Is that why I cheat on my wife?
Not. No.
Is that why I killed those cats?
No. Actually, there's no correlation between.
Is that why I took those upskirt photos?
Absolutely not.
Is that why I killed those children?
How much ADHD does not in any way precipitate murderous tendencies.
Oh, too late. I've already tweeted.
Sorry, I just got bored while I was just tweeting while you were talking. Sorry, say again. This is the reason why I am a prick.
It's just so flagrantly offensive.
I know, by the way.
Every other person who has ADHD.
I know people with ADHD, not pricks.
Yes.
It might explain, some of the fixation that you in terms of his behavior. It might explain, some impulsiveness and sort of the things that he does. But like also, it may be an excuse, but you're still responsible for your actions. No. Like you're still a grown up. Like it's like
it's not year two where little Timmy is yelling at the back of the class and they're like, "Oh, that kid's got ADHD."
It may be. When I say an excuse,
that itself's also bad.
It may explain some of the behavior, but it's not an excuse. That's what I'm saying. Like you are still an adult. You still have control over your senses. And if it really is the case that you are so completely out of your faculties that you have no control over this completely inappropriate behavior whatsoever, then maybe it should be prohibited from you being a member of parliament. If you are so incapable of like not taking upskirt photos and harassing women online because of your, mental disorder, then like maybe you shouldn't be in charge of laws and stuff.
It turns out psychiatrist Dr. Karen Williams, who's the founder of Doctors Against Violence Against Women, so that ADHD is not normally associated with such behaviour.
Weird.
There we go.
It's not a cause for remorsefulness. Can't say this word here.
Remorselessness,
or other antisocial behaviour such as harassment. So as Tom said, it's basically throwing anyone with this condition under the bus.
Yeah, like just trying to be like, that's the reason I'm such a bastard or awful. It's like, whenever like any other people accused of being a sex pest just talk about being like, the sex addiction. It's like, but sometimes there are people who have sex addictions who don't rape people. Like, you can't just throw all those people under the bus to explain away your behavior.
Sometimes it's just you being a fucking asshole. Like,
yeah. Sometimes you are just capable of abhorrent things. So it's just flagrantly offensive that he's done this. I cannot believe it.
Do you think he has his like staff doing some of the 50,000 posts a year? Like, do you reckon
the suggestion was that he was doing all this sort of stuff himself. Like,
fuck.
And you think
sleep?
And when you
can schedule tweets.
When you're saying he's doing some batching, he's read some Tim Ferriss 4-hour work week stuff, and he's batching tasks to avoid switching costs. Get up. It's one of those things where it's like you just got to get up 5 a.m., harass women on 3 hours for the internet, get into your work, get home, shower, work out. Do another 5 hours of harassing women online. It's the hours are in the day. You just got to find. You got to make time for the things you care about.
Oh yeah. While you're working out, you're dictating to Siri what your harassing social media posts are going to be. It's just.
The thing that really like bothered me about it was that one of the central sort of allegations against him was this upskirting thing where he took a photograph of a woman, sort of bending over, stocking a fridge. And like, in this interview that came out from, I think it was Sky News, where they're saying like, oh no, it wasn't. I was taking a photo of the workplace and we mutually agreed together that the photo needed to be deleted for this workplace photo. You know how you go to workplaces, you just take workplace photos and share them on social media, and then people yell at you to stop and you have to delete it off your phone. He goes, I was cleared of wrongdoing. It's like, yeah, because you deleted the photo. So there was like no evidence of the wrongdoing because the manager came up to you and made you delete the clearly inappropriate photo that you obviously took of the staff member. Like,
yeah, it's kind of like you've been busted, maybe stealing something from the store, and they've said, "Look, like, give me the stock back, and get out of here," rather than.
And you go, "I didn't steal it. I gave it back. I got caught, so I had to give it back. So I didn't steal."
No, you did.
No, I didn't walk out of the store with it. So it's completely frivolous allegations. Anyway, there were a bunch of female members of the coalition that have, called him reprehensible and all this sort of stuff, and the Social Services Minister, Anne Ruston, described his actions as, quote, abhorrent, and called on him to reflect on his place in the Liberal National Party room. He suggested during the interview that while his Liberal colleagues were right to abandon him at the time, Laming said they had done so with a limited amount of information and insisted circumstances had changed. Quote, I am confident that they will have changed their mind by the time we go back because they spoke at a time where there were some pretty ridiculous allegations that have since, in fact, just a day later, fell over.
I think
so.
Like, the names have changed. They have. You've just added another level of being a piece of shit.
I'm sure that they'll be over it. It's like, shouldn't you ask them? Yeah, their opinions don't really matter. I've decided that they're over it, so it'll be fine. I'm coming back. It'll be great.
Yeah, women will like what I tell them to like.
I don't understand how he can be like, oh yeah, I'll step down, and then not follow through with that now. Like, as a voter,
it's ADHD keeps getting distracted.
Oh, of course. Right. Okay. Yep.
I thought another interesting part of that, I think, of the post where he announced it, I don't have it in front of me here, but I thought that made reference to, like, the part of it that sort of said, so my diagnosis, my ADHD diagnosis could explain my behavior, was framed in a way of, like, his friend said, like, oh yeah, that probably explains why he's a bit of a dickhead sometimes. And it's awful for two reasons. One, the reason we've just spent a while talking about of how offensive that is to anyone else with ADHD. But two, like, wow, shit friends. I mean, if a journalist came to me and was like, Adam's, been diagnosed with what have you, and I'll be like, oh man, that explains why he's such a cunt, hey. It's like,
hey, sorry, Tom, I don't know if you know this.
Why would I say that to a journalist?
Tom, Adam's actually just been diagnosed with polio. What's your reaction to that?
Oh, God, yeah. It explains why he's rubbish on the soccer field.
I am rubbish on the soccer field, incidentally. It's not because of that.
But, I mean, like, who... I don't know. Could you imagine if someone was just like, oh, hi, it's blah, blah, blah from the ABC or from the Guardian or whatever. Like, can I just get a quote of what do you think about your friend's awful behavior and then also this recent medical diagnosis? And you would frankly say, oh, it explains why he's a dickhead.
No, it checks out because he's been a fucking idiot his entire life. And then all of a sudden it makes perfect sense. I don't know why I've stayed friends with him this entire time.
This is hypothetical, right? Not about me.
Yeah. He's been diagnosed with, that diagnosis really explains the absolute waste of space and failure that this man has been his entire life. I honestly question our friendship constantly, and you have opened up my eyes as to why they just suck.
Good mates.
Did you get all that? Yeah, we got all that. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Do you mind if I call back?
Thank you very much.
If I get someone to call back and fact check?
Can you just spell that for me?
TSIPOS, Tipos. T for Tom, S for Sam. Oh, no, I'm happy to be quoted.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, fuckwit.
You need anything else, let me know.
FUCKWIT. Yeah, fuckwit. Yeah.
Also, if you want some compromising photos from like a pub crawl when we're in our early 20s, like,
okay.
Hit me up.
And his name, Doreen, DIREEN. Middle name Christopher. CHRIS.
I thought you realized this is a hypothetical. I'm very confused about what is real and what is not right now. I was just going along with that.
That's how we get there. That's pretty galling and awful. I think from our story rundown list, we might have gone through most of them at this point. Did we want to touch on just, I guess, the massive international story this week of India? A lot has been going on around India at the moment. India is going through a huge surge in COVID cases. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's quite high and scary.
400,000 a day at the moment. They reckon it'll peak probably around 900,000 a day.
No, Tom, sorry. If you ask the, I don't know, tangential family member of mine, a few months ago, they said India's got the perfect balance. They've got more freedoms, everything's open, everything's going great there in India. So I don't know what you're talking about. So
well, they did, and then they took it for granted, and now it's out of control.
No, I'm pretty sure that Australian lockdowns are too severe, and Indian ones are perfect, and that's why everything's going so well for them at the current moment. So
yeah, it turns out having bunches of religious festivals and everyone bathing in the Ganges and getting up and close and personal isn't great for public health.
Well, and also having campaign rallies and things like that for I think the elections or they're going on at the moment. I thought there was something like I was listening to this week's The Bugle. Which had some interesting nuggets of information because they had a correspondent over in India talking about how Prime Minister Modi was at a campaign rally that was full of maskless people and being like, it's so amazing to see so many people out here at a thing. It's like,
that was a week and a half ago. When cases were about 100,000 a day or something like that. And since then...
It's quadrupled by that point. It's pretty insane. And just some crazy quotes I've just seen coming out of there, because the thing I didn't quite understand about India was sort of how, the actual, the governance of Delhi isn't the government that Modi leads. It's much more kind of like a state and a federal sort of thing. So a lot of the decisions that are trying to be made for the people of the city are being made by the state sort of government. And Modi's just kind of taking pot shots at it the entire time. It's not like what's happening over here in Australia.
I was going to say, I don't think there's any precedent for federal and state ministers not getting along and shooting all over each other in the middle of a crisis where they should be cooperating.
But there were things like the I think the Delhi government were taking the Modi government to court over a COVID response.
Good. It's really important at this time to make sure that we spend the maximum amount of time, effort, and resources squabbling in the middle of a crisis rather than doing anything to actually solve it. That's definitely the best way to handle this, I reckon.
The other thing that's been sort of happening is that there's been a sort of concerted effort from various sectors of the government to try and limit criticism of them, where they're sort of asking people to take down posts and stories.
Removing hashtags on social media, all this sort of shit.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they're literally... We don't know the real death toll per day at the moment because people are rocking up to hospitals, not being able to get in, and they're going home to die.
And if they haven't been tested, it doesn't register as a coronavirus case.
As a COVID test.
And also their case positivity rate is 30%. So it's 1 out of every 3 people tested test positive, which means there's probably a bunch more cases out there that we're not even aware of, that aren't getting treated either. So it just looks as though, you look at the graph of it, if you Google India coronavirus, you'll see a graph that starts in June of last year, sort of peaks around, middle of September, around 90,000 cases a day, and starts sloping down again. And everyone's like, oh, India's got it in the bag. India's won the fucking pandemic. And then you look around sort of 22nd of March of this year, and it just goes just like a hockey stick, just exponential fucking growth.
They literally can't burn the bodies quick enough because in Hindu culture, you cremate your deceased. They cannot burn the bodies quick enough.
They're building... There's footage I saw on the ABC this morning of people building new improvised fucking crematoriums just out in the bush to they literally can't build these crematoriums fast enough to burn all the bodies that are coming through.
It's really haunting.
Drone footage from above, and it's just it literally looks like something out of concentration camps in Nazi Germany. That's what that is the level of death that is happening right now. Tens of thousands of people dying a day.
And the scary thing is, of course, you'd think if it was any other country, you go, well, that'll just get through the whole population. But you think, oh, well, okay. There are 1.3 billion people in India. If everyone in India gets infected, and all the way, by the way, there's also another variant of the virus, as far as I know. That's
like all these outbreaks. While people always talk about, just like further lockdowns and stuff till vaccines happen and blah blah blah. It's like every time there's a big outbreak like this is like opportunity for mutation.
And they are apparently leading the world in terms of, I think, vaccine manufacturing in India, but they can't get it out quick enough. So in response, we've got America, Australia, various other European countries or countries around the world sending aid and oxygen supplies, vaccine manufacturing materials to India to try and help. But it's so out of control now. Like, I don't know what good that's really going to do.
Well, and oxygen's been the big kind of contention point as well, because so much of treating a case of COVID involves like getting someone on oxygen and all that sort of stuff. And it's just gotten to a point of ridiculousness that you're part of that, those court proceedings I referred to before, in that like the lawyer representing like the Delhi government, so speaking on behalf of the India government, telling people to not be crybabies. About it. Like just this like callousness and just kind of that whole of, no, we're doing great. Like, yeah, it's all perfect. Like,
pretty sure Thanos called someone a crybaby in one of the Avengers movies, just because I want to kill half of the population. You guys are being such crybabies about it. Like, this is, I don't know. I can't imagine a level of callousness like that. It just seems like beyond the pale.
Beyond parody. Yeah, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. But then also, we kind of have to not be on our high horses, because our government's response to this situation has been...
Tom, I think you'll find the federal government's response to any coronavirus situation is nothing short of stellar. Go ahead.
Absolutely stellar. So obviously, as was sort of done a lot over the past year, maybe putting some restrictions on people coming in from, high case countries. But the extra step they've taken this time is that it's actually like illegal to enter Australia from India, even if you're an Australian citizen.
Yeah.
With like punishable by like jail time or like fines in the tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, which seems like that's not how citizenship works. Like,
no,
how is that legal?
I don't know.
They say it is, I guess. I don't know. Like, they're the literal lawmakers. So I guess, I don't know, they've decided that that's legal to do.
Of course, the federal government having a consistent quarantine policy, which is managed by the Commonwealth government and not by the states, so we could transition away from hotel quarantine. That's something that's too hard to commit to. So we'll just keep
way too hard to commit to. Yeah, and of course we've this has been consistently our practices, right? Like, whenever there was a country with a spiking case rate and absurd amounts of death and just a huge risk to have anyone coming in from that country, we completely blocked even our citizens from coming in under punishment of jail time. Like, all the other countries we did that for, right? All the white people countries. We didn't.
No,
we didn't do that to the white countries. Oh, okay.
Just
right,
the Browns.
Cool. That's not telling.
We were just after the Browns.
Do you reckon it's a Peter Dutton call? Who made that call?
He's no longer the
Home Affairs.
I
thought he was Home Affairs as well.
Nah, he's Defence. Home Affairs is now... top of my head is gone, because I know... Is it Michaela Cash is now the Attorney General?
I know the Home Affairs Secretary said some shit to piss China off this week, but...
the Honourable Alex Hawke MP.
There we go, is the Home Affairs Minister.
Not
so yeah, who knows if... Because I know that's relatively recent, like within the last month or something like that, so who knows if Dutton was consulted. I guess it doesn't really matter.
I just thought he might have had something being Home Affairs, but...
it's fucked. Like,
it's cool.
It looks at best racist, at worst like just like incredibly corrupt and fascist.
We've been saying,
and the problem
6 months,
is like a lot of these people have been waiting for like over a year to get back into Australia. Like they finally had some chartered, like flights chartered. They were booked in, and at first the Australian government said it was going to lower the amount of people it was going to accept from India, and then it's lowered them again, and then it said actually we're not accepting people from India, and now actually not only are we not accepting people from India, but like we will fucking lock them up if they come back. Like it just seems like such a escalation, and I understand the anxiety about borders, about being an island nation and accepting people back into the country. But like, if you're turning around and saying that, hotel quarantine, I don't accept the premise of the question because hotel quarantine is 99.99% effective, which is what ScoMo said. If it's so effective, then why aren't we bringing these people home? Then do it if it's so effective. Like, you can't have it both ways. You can't say it's too dangerous to bring them home, but also hotel quarantine is fucking flawless. And it's like, like it can't be both, right? So
apparently there's 9,000 Australians in India at the moment, about a couple of hundred of whom are classed as, I don't know what this really means, but vulnerable. So I'm assuming that's like elderly or people that aren't financially
conditions or all that
it
sort of
stuff. It just seems inhumane to like.
Incredibly. And so there's sort of two things that need to be tackled with this situation. One, India needs a lot of help, so we should be encouraging helping them. But then also, just condemning even our own citizens. I know it feels kind of weird to be like, our own citizens are more important. I always hate that sort of like nationalist mentality. But like even just deciding to condemn your own citizens to stay in this hot spot is pretty brutal.
The thing that galls me is that they've had hotel quarantine was meant to be a temporary fix to a extraordinary circumstance, and for that, it's done pretty well. The federal government should have been setting up and running dedicated quarantine facilities middle of last year.
They've had 14 months to do it. Like the Victorian government has proposed this week, has said, okay, well we can build a dedicated quarantine facility. It's going to cost $200 million. Do you want to give us the money to do it? Which is like, it seems like such an own goal from the federal government to not have done something or proposed something. It's like
use Christmas Island as like a stopgap measure for certain, but they're worried that like.
No, we can't send white people to Christmas Island. The conditions there are completely inhumane. It's like, well, we'd send refugees there all the time. Yeah, but not white people, not real people.
The problem is that they're worried that you've got to have a quarantine facility next to hospitals and population to staff the facilities, and there's got to be a lot of ticks in the box to be able to make it work.
Okay, yes, but like they seem so concerned about what happens to Australians once they get here. But not at all fucking concerned about Australians being overseas and like dying in some hellhole overseas. Like that, they're fine. That's an acceptable risk. Is like if you die in India because you can't get any fucking medical attention whatsoever, then that's fine. But like taking you in, there's got to be a hospital nearby, so kind of like shrugs.
So look, even if the government about faces on their policy tomorrow, it'll take them 6 to 12 months, if not longer, to get any of these facilities up and running.
Well, that's the thing is these facilities wouldn't be up and running till like 2022 most likely. It's like, are we going to need facilities like that at that point? I don't know. I think this quarantine thing is going to be going on for a while. I don't see this like this whole coronavirus thing getting wrapped up in 6 months. Do you? Like I see this thing going on, dragging on for another couple of years. Like
if half of India is infected, like that's just going to spread throughout the world.
It's just going to be the new reality, I think, is we're going to have to go get, new vaccines, updates and boosters for new variants every so often. And it'll be like 15 years from now, we'll be like, oh, it's actually over. Like,
I remember when I went, for perspective, when it first kicked off back in March last year, where we first had our first cases in Australia, went to the gym and I was like, oh, better put the gym membership on hold because we're about to start work. They're like, okay, cool. How long are you going to put the gym membership on hold for? I had a good think. I was like, okay, let's go through it. Well, if they, carry the one, about a month. I reckon back in the office in about a month.
Yeah, remember when we saw like us coming out of our working from home-esque lockdown, that brief little period before the second turbo lockdown? We were all like, oh, it's been 2-3 months, but all right, we're getting out the other end of it. We did it, you guys. Like when we thought that this would be a problem that would only be that long.
Yeah. Oh,
Next
to
minute,
have such hope.
We go.
That's so funny. Like, I've seen so many messages like happy anniversary to this tweet, and it's like, or to this message, and it's like, hey, you're going to be working from home for the next couple of weeks. Can't do this thing. Can we put it on hold? And it's just like a year later since that message.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and it's not, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. Like, vaccines are good, but there's going to be variants. There's going to be people who don't get vaccinated. The new things will pop up. Like, it's just, this is a fairly permanent state of affairs, I think, going forward. I hope it's not. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's all over by fucking summer 2020, but like 2022. But like, I just
get shredded for stereo.
Gotta get. I do need to get shredded for stereos. Stereosonic is a music festival which will be conducted entirely on Zoom from now on.
I was going to say, you're a few years too late. I think if you're getting shredded for stereo, it's not a thing anymore.
Right.
Damn it!
Tom, I'll get shredded regardless, mate.
I mean, yeah, good for you. Do it. You can wear one of those singlet top that like has the sleeve holes are just like way, way, way too low.
Bing Tang singlet from Bali, which we can't go to anymore.
Gosh, do you remember just elsewhere? Do you remember elsewhere? Just being elsewhere.
You can go to New Zealand. New Zealand.
Great. I mean, great.
Yeah. I mean, I was in South Australia about a month ago. That was pretty different and cool.
I just basically just want to see anything other than these four walls. I feel like I switch the show. Like, I'm also here the rest of the week. Like, we do the show once a week, and we come in, we do the show, like, we record, and then I switch off the camera. Boop, see ya. And then I'm just here in the dark waiting for a week. I'm sitting at the same desk in front of the same computer, just doing different things. And then I just open little just open the window up and we do the show again, and then I close it, and then I'm still sitting here for the whole week. That's basically my life.
Yeah.
But George, the dressing, the dresser behind you is very nice. So, at least you got something to look at.
I got some more plants. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh yeah, your plants.
Are you a responsible plant owner? Do you water your plants?
Yeah. I mean, great. Yeah, Gracie does. Gracie, that's one of her. I do the bins. I pick up the dog poos. She waters the plants.
Yep. Yeah. You go out and water your concrete like a good
wog. Maybe what did the concrete? Maybe statue grow.
It's pretty great.
Good.
On that note.
Yeah.
On that very satisfying note, as the world burns, we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you visit us on all the bullshit social medias that are ruining the world, that have, do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and motherfucking TikTok. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and TikTok at George Tsipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
You can follow me on Instagram at AC Dream.
And you can follow us all into this tiny little black box that I call my life. Good night. Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. We'll see you next week.